Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to have a quick look at how to read pairs or combination of cards. So one card when it's to be read next to the next card or together with the previous card. But we're only going to have a look at the major arcana, and the reason behind it is because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of combinations, and if I did the whole of the deck, it would this video would be too long. So let's have a look at what I mean in specifics. Now you may notice that I have 3 Marseille decks in here, and the reason why I'm starting with these 3 decks is because the tradition of pairing up cards, whether it's within the major arcana or with the major arcana, one major arcana and one minor, or within even minor arcana themselves, has actually been more prominent with the readings using a Tarot de Marseille. However, what I really want to stress today is that you don't always have to, or you don't only have to use this method of reading with a Marseille deck. You can actually learn it, and you can really enjoy the benefits of knowing how to read tarot pairs in the RWS system as well. Let's have a look. So as I said at the beginning of the video, this is definitely something that a tradition that has started within the reading of the Tarot de Marseille system. And I'm going to show you some of my Marseille decks, at least the ones that are not being packed yet, because I'm moving in. Hopefully, we still haven't found a place, but I'm moving in a few weeks. And I hate moving, so I fool myself into believing that if I do a little bit of packing every day, then it wouldn't feel as terrible, and it still does. And I think that actually the effect is actually the opposite of what I want, because somehow it's getting even worse. I'm getting to really hate the sight of boxes and scotch tape and stuff like that, and my cats are extremely stressed, so I'm not convinced that it's the right thing to do. Anyway, I've already started. So this is the Tarot de Nostradamus. I think yes, by Heron. I'm pretty sure this is out of print now. I could be wrong. I haven't done a lot of research on these decks, to be honest, because I stopped using them when I found out that they were, at least they were going to get out of print, or at least they were becoming difficult to find. And so because I used to read this tarot, as you can quite easily see from the difference in color of the edging, I used to do a lot of this type of reading in the major arcana, and I noticed that this is probably a couple of years of usage, not more than that, and see how much how the difference is strong between the cards that have been used and the cards I haven't. And so I talked myself out of using this, because I'm really worried about damaging. If this is what happens to the edges after only a couple of years of using, then you can imagine 35 years of usage what will do to this deck. So I stopped using it. It's a really beautiful deck. I'm not a fan of the fact that the borders are square and pointy, and they're really spiky and painful. More than once I've actually been the victim of a puncture by these cards. But it's a really beautiful deck, and if you know this deck, you'll know how Nostradamus was so much into the occult that he created in the sense that he's been drawing this deck out of the Marseille tradition. We have a few famous studies that show how these cards have been evolving with time. But one thing is for certain, that whenever there's a tarot deck that has been designed by an occultist or a prominent occultist, for example, they always try and be as faithful to the tradition as possible. You don't see a lot of evolution, and you don't see a lot of, let's say, free will in interpreting the cards or in drawing the cards when we talk about Nostradamus. But also, for example, I'm thinking about Cagliostro. Cagliostro is also a very famous occultist, even though he was from Italy. Nostradamus was from France, I believe. So this is the Major Arcanas, and the reason why I'm taking them out is, as I said at the beginning of this video, that we're going to focus on the Major Arcanas today to read the cards in pair rather than the whole deck, even though you can read pairs throughout the whole deck, especially when they are paired. There are a few indications in which you can read 2 minor arcanas as a pair, but most of the time this tradition looks at a pairing between a minor and a major, or 2 majors alone. What I'm going to do, so we've got the majors here. I'm just going to show you one by one, and we will start from the Magician. So let me just get these in order. Okay, so I put them in order, starting with the Magician, and I put the Le Fou, so the Fool at the end after the World. And let's have a look. So I don't need any more room. I think I can just do this. Okay, let's start. So we've got the Magician. Now the Magician, obviously referring back, all of these meanings will be referring back to the tradition of the Marseille system. However, as I said at the beginning, it is really interesting to know how to read pairs, because you can actually use the associations also in the RWS system. They wouldn't work in the Thoth system because of several different, and it's also because the Thoth is actually referring back to let's say the completely different kinds of energies. The RWS somehow as well. However, I do recognize that there are more similarities between the Major Arcanas of the Marseille and the Major Arcanas of the RWS than there are about between any of these 2 systems and the Thoth system. So the Magician by itself, we have the practicality, the skills, the creative intelligence. It's got someone with quick reflexes. There's a lot of development and progression, and of course it always points to the as above and so below, as we know. I'm not going to spend too much time for each and every card because we already know the meaning, or I am assuming that we already know the meanings of these arcana. What I'm going straight to is the pairing. So when we've got the Magician together with the Pope, for example. Now, please understand, when I say pairing, I mean exactly this. So perhaps we have a 3-card pool, perhaps we have a more complex pool, perhaps we have, in Marseille, for example, a very good kind of spread is the Vitruvian Man. So the Vitruvian Man with, you know, the head and the heart and the arms and the legs and the center of life. Then we've got, for example, the circular reading. So we've got cards put in circle one after the other. So it needs to be a spread where cards have the possibility to be seen as, you know, staying in the spread as a couple, as a pair. And not necessarily, you cannot read, for example, if we have a card here in the middle, these 2 will not be read as a pair. These 2 will be read essentially, unless this is a major or a card that can be read as a pair with either one of these cards, then of course, but not as these 2 together. They need to be one next to the other like this, or, you know, in a spread, but in any case next to the other. So when we are looking at the Magician and followed, let's say, by the Pope, we have a connotation that the Pope gives to the Magician. So this way, you need to read the Magician as a person that has a lot more inspiration than wisdom. Okay, so these are connotation. You will see that that is not always the case. In some cases, pairings or combination between the cards give you a different direction on the reading that you're doing. They can give you a deeper insight on the reading that you're doing. Sometimes, though, they can actually connotate. So the connotate means giving a different kind of shade or a deeper kind of shade to the qualification and the identification of the card. So the Magician with the Pope still denotes what we would usually look at for the Magician, but we need to remember that because there is a Pope beside it, we need to think of a man that is more person that is more inspired than wise. This is pair number 1. If we look at the Magician with the Wheel of Fortune, so I just have to find it, there you go. So remember, these need to be easily to be taken together, okay, as to be read as a pair. In this case, the Magician, when it's followed by the Wheel of Fortune, denotes a change or a beneficial journey, a positive journey, okay. There's a change that is going to be happening soon, and it's going to be a change for the best, or it's going to be a journey that you're going to embark upon, and it's going to be something positive. Going ahead, when we see the Magician in combination with the Devil, which I still haven't found. Where is the Devil? There it is. So in this case, the Devil has a very strong influence. You will see that every time that there's a pairing up of a card with the Devil always has, let's say, the predominant character, and so the influence of the Devil will be very heavy. So when even a really let's say positive and full of energy card like the Magician will be affected by the negative, almost constrictive kind and oppressive kind of energy of the Devil. In fact, these two together denote an irresponsible decision. It means that the setting the wheels in motion that we see with the Magician and try and achieve something with his own or with their own skills is actually negatively affected by the Devil, because the Devil will preclude us from looking and from seeing what the right direction is, and therefore the choices that we will take after the influence of the Devil will be irresponsible. And then, sorry. We are having a look at the Magician paired up with Judgment. And there you go, that's the card. So in this case though, it actually has a very positive indication. It means that it's a positive, it's a good ending. So whenever we embark upon this journey with the Magician of creating something, perfecting something, this means with the Judgment next to it, it means that it will go really well. It will have a happy ending. Then with the Fool, the Magician with the Fool in this case in this direction, so the Magician first and the Fool later, indicates mistakes and uncontrollable desires. Now, had it been the other way around, it would have to be seen as an evolution, for example. So from the, let's say, the naivete, you go into acquiring the knowledge and the wisdom that you need. However, we talked about what the Magician is pairing up with and how to read the Magician with the combination of another card. So in this case, when the Magician comes first and the Fool comes later, we'll have to read it as mistakes. So this is the Magician. I think you get the gist, so I'm going to be a little bit quicker to show you all of the other cards and all of the combinations. Let's go have a look at the High Priestess. So the first pair that we can read of the High Priestess is the High Priestess with the Pope or the Hierophant. In this tarot deck is called a Grand Pastor. So this is denoting desires fulfilled and successful recovery. This is rather important because we will see how traditions has actually, the evolution of traditions have actually changed, and in many later tarot decks, especially in the RWS system, when they are representing the Pope or the Hierophant, in some cases we will have to read this not as a positive card but as a neutral, and in some cases, depending on the deck, even as a negative card. However, the tradition of the Marseille actually looks at the Pope as a very positive card, the card of wisdom, the card of even a successful outcome. So paired up, when we're pairing up the High Priestess and the Pope, as I said before, desires fulfilled, successful recovery. Now let's have a look at the Priestess and the Wheel of the Year. There it is. So the High Priestess and the Wheel of the Year, in this case, the Priestess is the one that has the bigger hand in this combination, and it denotes a success in all matters. So when you have the incognito, let's say, the unknown brought about by the Wheel of Fortune, that could be good, that could be bad, you never know, it could be the ebb and flow in life. But the High Priestess has got enough influence on its own to actually determine that this is a positive outcome, so success in all matters. So the High Priestess with the Devil, we are facing as sort of an impossibility to change our destiny. This is again the very negative influence of the devil, but you need to understand that the negativity of the devil is always referring back to a kind of a situation in which we are stuck. So we are enslaved, we are chained down, and that's very strong, and that's one of the reasons why some of my favorite depictions, for example, of the devil, and most of the time they are like that, they will show the devil holding either a rope or a chain, something that actually holds us prisoners. So it is very important to make the distinction. This is not an Eight of Swords situation. The Eight of Swords is a very easy situation to get out of, okay? Those chains are not very tight. The swords that are in front of us, as a matter of fact, we can actually squeeze through them. We can actually release ourselves. It's not that bad. The devil is bad because we make it so, in the same way in which the Eight of Swords is a cage of our own making. But when we reach the devil level, let's call it this way, we cannot see that anymore. In the Eight of Swords, we can still see that. In the devil, we cannot see that. And it has become, if I may just give you this parallel, this comparison, it's the pain that you have when something happens, you dislocate your shoulder, and that's an Eight of Swords situation in which you know that you're gonna get better. But say, for example, you keep on having pain, you go into a spiral of despair, you think it's never gonna end, you convince yourself that you'll always be in pain for the rest of your life. That becomes chronic pain. That's the devil. So that's how you go from a cage of your own making that you can kind of easily escape from with the Eight of Swords into the devil that actually holds the key to the locks of the chain around your neck. So when you've got the High Priestess and the devil, as a matter of fact, the devil will be so strong that it will give the priestess the impossibility to change their own destiny. Let's have a look at the combination between the Priestess and the Judgment card, which I got right here. So in this case, we're going to have a look at a very interesting revelation. These are news coming our way. There's a reveal. There's something we didn't know before. And this will be so important in our lives that we'll actually change our mind about something. So we'll change our decision. Mind you, it doesn't necessarily mean, or it doesn't necessarily, when it's only two cards and you read them as a pair, it doesn't necessarily point to a positive kind of change. It could be a negative one or it could be a neutral one, but it's still a change. So there is a change of direction. In order to be able to establish whether it's a positive change or a negative one, you'll need to read the cards that are around this. But in this case, still, we've had the High Priestess that, generally speaking, by tapping into their own intuition, knows where to go. You have this kind of a setback at first because they'll receive this kind of revelation and news, and they will change their mind. Let's have a look at the pairing up of the High Priestess with the World card. The High Priestess with the World card is a very, very positive outcome. It's a triumph. It's the indication that whatever obstacle or challenge or issue you have in front of you and you're dealing with right now, it will be overcome. It's a fantastic combination to have. It's a really good pair because it's not just a success of the world, it's a success that is actually conscious and aware. And it's not just that, it's something that actually has been, it was at the beginning, it was just a blossom of an idea that was born with the High Priestess, and it has concluded its cycle in a very positive way. There may have been obstacles and issues and challenges during the journey, but we see with the completion of the world that these are overcome quite easily, as a matter of fact. Now let's have a look at the Priestess with the Fool card, which is right here. So in this case, we see that unfortunately the Fool card again is seen as not necessarily a negative card per se, but because of the initial ignorance, the lack of experience, the probably the impulsiveness that determined that the characteristics of the Fool card, the certainty of the card, of the High Priestess card, are actually collapsing. And so as a matter of fact, the outcome of this will be a lost opportunity, something that we held in our hands, but unfortunately we lost. Now let's have a look at the Empress card. So as we've seen before, the combinations are between one Major Arcana and then the strongest card in the Major Arcana suit. So we'll see the Empress paired up with the Hierophant in this case. So the earthy character of the Empress in this case is actually clashing with the airy character of the Hierophant. Let's see with the Wheel of Fortune. So the Empress paired up with the Wheel of Fortune, we've got a growth of wealth due to merit. So we've got again, the Empress in this case is strong enough to influence a positive outcome in the rather neutral card that can be seen as the Wheel of Fortune. Then the Empress paired up with the Devil card. In this case, we talk about a lot of sensuality. This is the realm of the senses. But because the Devil card is a very unstable card, this sensuality can actually bring up a lot of jealousy. It can bring up a fight. It can bring up a lot of quarreling because of the instability of the card itself. So it's not just sensuality, but it can also be jealousy. Then the pairing with the Judgment card, so we've got an unexpected improvement, a reward at the end. This is a very, again, the Empress is free to exercise the positive influence on the Judgment card. So Judgment is always something that is revealed, it's always something that comes out of the blue, but it also depends on the other card you pair it with to see whether this thing that comes out of the blue is a positive thing or not. In this case, it's a positive thing. Then pair it up with the World. Sorry, I always struggle when I read the card, the title of the card, I read it in French in my head and then I have to translate it. So I always start with Le Monde. No, it's the World. So what this pair points to is, in many cases, the sharpening of the senses. The sharpening of the practical. It's almost as if the World were influencing the Empress in a practical way. It makes the Empress an even more practical person. In some other cases, though, we have seen that it can also mean the birth of a boy. Now, I don't really like to read gender, and I don't refer to boy as a gender, but it's bringing out the possibility of the birth of a masculine kind of energy. And it can also denote a positive ending or for a union. So it could also mean a marriage or a partnership that someone has actually wished for. And finally, when we pair it up with the Fool card, we see that in this case, again, the Fool card has got this really strong influence on any other card that precedes it with this uncertainty. So we look at carelessness and in many cases also waste of talent. Now let's have a look at the Emperor. Now the Emperor with the Pope denotes a triumph over antagonism. This is obviously referring back to the two probably quite different personalities of these characters. So we've got the Emperor, which is bringing about the quality of dominion, the power, the charisma, the bringing back the order into the unknown, into the chaos, whereas the Pope is more the introspection and the knowledge and the wisdom. And in this case, these two combine, as you can imagine, it's just a very strong kind of trait, and that's why it always denotes some kind of a triumph. Then when we pair it up with the Wheel of Fortune, like this, then we're looking at a very positive outcome. So we have been facing a situation in which there was a little bit of upside down, but not right now. The efforts have been rewarded. They're coming our way, and life will actually be better. When we pair it up with the devil card, we see that, as always, the devil has a very destabilizing kind of effect on any card that is preceding it, and in this case it denotes a very forced acceptance of the adversity that is in front of us. So the challenges, stop trying fighting them, but actually accept that they exist. When we pair it up with the judgment card, sorry, I'm speeding up because I otherwise will stay here for 3-4 hours. And you understand the process is basically these two energies and looking at them and finding a way to interpret both of these two energies together in one single sentence. So when we pair up the Emperor and the Judgment card, we've got discipline, instinctual discipline, so we know what to do and also the order in which to do it. It's also a really good advice that we can eventually receive from outside. And when we look at the Emperor and the World card, there's a lot of very good ground for development. It's a comfortable situation. There's a lot of sense of security that comes our way. Last but not least, the Emperor paired up with the Fool. Obviously, we need to remember the energies at play here. So we've got a lot of, authoritative kind of energy coming from the Emperor, and this kind of carelessness that is coming from the Fool, which together produce a little bit of awareness and fear of the future. So now what we're going to have a look at is the Pope. Now, since the Pope is one of the major cards, we're not going to pair it up with the Pope, but we're going to look at the Pope pairing up with immediately with the Wheel of Fortune. So in this case, we're going to look at profitable delay followed by great joy. This is very specific. So it's almost as if we were saying that the Pope, being a card that is not necessarily going for results straight away, it doesn't have the carelessness or impulsiveness of the Fool, therefore it takes its time before trying and shoot for the stars. But the fact that it's combined with the Wheel of Fortune definitely gives us that sense of accomplishment. When we pair it up with the Devil card, this is an interesting one. Okay, so first and foremost, obviously the destabilizing power of the Devil over the Pope create that sense of regret for decisions that we have taken. But because we look, in many cases, let's not forget that Tarot de Marseille tradition was born when there was a very strong attention towards our bodies, not just our spirits or our minds. Therefore, in many of these combinations, we will see that there are references to, for example, something very factual related to our bodies. So the birth of a boy we've seen before, and this one indicates rheumatism. So I'm going, after the definitions that I found in. I've actually not talked about this, but what I'm looking at is the book that it's a very old book in Italian. I bought it back in, I think it was about 20 years ago, and then what happened was that I lost it. I bought it in Venice in a very famous bookstore that goes underwater when there's the water rises in Venice, and because of that it was almost it was damaged. Let's say it had quite clear water damage, and I bought it with a discount, and I just saw it. I had no idea what was inside, and it was a book that only talked about these kind of combinations in the Tarot de Marseille, and I found it extremely interesting, so I carried it with me all the time. And once I took a train, I was in a train and I lost my bag, and unfortunately the book was in there, so I spent the next, I don't know, 10-15 years probably, about 12-13 years looking for it again. I did not remember the title, didn't remember the author, barely remember what it looks like. And then one day I actually found it on a PDF in a website. I think it was about 5 years ago. So I downloaded it, and ever since then I think the website, so it was a blog more than a website, it was someone pointing out these correspondences, and I thought to myself, okay, so this person has actually photocopied and uploaded it, the book that I read. And so I downloaded it and I printed it out, but unfortunately now the blog doesn't exist anymore. I actually checked a couple of days ago. So it's an out of print book. It's very difficult to find, but I'm sure there's other books. As a matter of fact, Debbie Lip has got a book on correspondences. So if you want to check out books on correspondences between tarot cards, although hers is more related to the RWS, not necessarily just the Marseille, but that one is a very interesting one. So going on, as I said before, during the Marseille tradition, people were reading a lot of things related to the physical body, the actual physical body. So the Pope or the Hierophant combined with the devil actually refers to rheumatism, so physical pain. When we pair it up with Judgment, like this, we can see that we're looking at a material reward, so something positive that comes our way, but very, again, Marseille tradition, very factual, very daily life, very nitty-gritty stuff, very concrete. When we're looking at the pairing up with the World card, so the Hierophant and the World card, in this case it's a very good positive outcome. So it gives the possibility to win, overcome the obstacles that originally we could see sourced out of the Devil card. So this is a bit of a circular kind of reading, in the sense that we keep the Hierophant card and then we circle around back to the meaning brought about the pairing up with the Devil card. So the regret we feel for the decision we have taken in this case is actually turned into something positive, because we will, thanks to the World card, we actually overcome that negative situation. And finally, when we pair it up with the Fool card, we have an unexpected help coming our way. This is one of the very few instances in which the Fool card as a pair actually has a very positive meaning. So now we're going to have a look at the Lovers. So how to pair up the Lovers with the Hierophant card. So in this case, again, with the Marseille, we see the tradition going back to the physical aspect pointed out by the cards. In this case, it's an illness, okay? It's a malady, an illness, but it can also be a danger that needs to be kept away. And it also, in a way, signifies shaking off that kind of inertia in which we've fallen. So if we are restless because we're not moving forward and we're staying behind because of this sense of malaise, this will actually be shaken off. Then if we pair it up with the Wheel of Fortune card, in this case we have, again, referring back to the physical condition. In this particular case, the Lovers card is seen with a negative energy, because it's the instability of the impossibility to decide. So it's got a negative energy. So therefore, the Wheel of Fortune, which is generally speaking a neutral card, would actually signify something negative. So in this case, it's a worsening of the physical condition, and it also denotes an unhappiness in love. If we pair it up even more so with the Devil card, like this, we'll see that we have a material kind of worry. So worries that come in the economical or the financial category, let's say. And even it's a very strong warning against a kind of new friendship that is very uncertain, it's very ambiguous, it's something we need to be careful about, because the person we have in front of us doesn't necessarily show us what they want from us. Then we will, with a pairing with the Judgment card. So pair it up with the Judgment card, it actually represents repressing some tendencies that were necessarily negative. So we acquire that sense of strength to look away from a bad decision, repress the need or the tendency that will push us towards something negative for us, and fulfilling the ambition that we have. Then we pair it up with the World card, and it's definitely something very positive. It's overcoming all the obstacles. It's also it brings about the admiration and the affection and the love of the ones around us, that can also come from achieving fame, for example. When, on the other hand, again, we pair it up with the uncertainty and the carelessness of the Fool card, we definitely look again at mistakes, like lies. For example, lies is very specific to the combo between the lovers and the Fool card because of the duality of the Lovers card, but it also brings about unhappiness. So let's have a look at the Chariot card. So the Chariot card, when combined with the Hierophant card, defines success. It also brings about luck in gambling and success in every matter. So it could be in business, it could be in your career, it can be, as I said, in gambling, so in financial matters, for example. Something always very concrete. Think of the suit of Earth, for example, but it's something very, very positive. When we pair it up with the Wheel of Fortune, we have a bit of a, again, in this case, we don't necessarily know whether it's positive or negative, but we have a change of mind. We're set in our ways. However, something happens that changes the certitude that we feel. And for the time being, actually denotes a bit of an aimless wandering, because we're not, so we obviously we change our mind, we don't necessarily know where to go next, and this can prove to be a little bit of a stall moment. When we pair it up with the Devil card, we actually have some references to a very sensual kind of passion, in a romantic interest. It can be something very intense, very powerful, that in some cases can actually turn violent. So we see the predominance of the negative aspects of the Devil card. When we pair it up with the Judgment card, we have, on the other hand, the arrival of new ideas. There's also the possibility of, moving forward towards an unexpected field that may interest us, so new discoveries, for example. When we pair it up with the World card, in this case, this is one of the most famous pair. Whenever I talk about how I read cards pair up together, for example, between two Major Arcanas, everyone knows about this pairing. So the Chariot and the World is a marriage. There's no two ways around that. The Chariot and the World is definitely a marriage. In some cases, instead of a marriage, because things change, of course, in society, so it might not necessarily be a marriage as in two people getting married with a certificate within the law, but it could also be an attachment, a union, but in any case it's something seen as beneficial. When instead we pair it up with the Fool card, we definitely see a possibility of losing our balance, and therefore the possibility of falling, possibility of an accident. And ironically, this is actually, because it's referring back to a trouble, it's like the Fool, this pair actually acts as a sort of a recommendation to avoid traveling, because there could be an accident. So that was the Chariot. The next card would be, because we're looking at Marseille, obviously it's going to be Justice. In this deck it's called Balance. When we pair it up, for example, with the with the Hierophant card, okay, in this case, the Balance card or the Justice card always implies that there always is a bit of a struggle. There always are a bit of issues, some challenges to overcome. So that actually it denotes all of the pairing. So in this case, there is a supremacy achieved, so you do get what you want, but after facing some difficulty. When it's paired up with the Wheel of Fortune, it brings about the negative aspect of the two. So there's actually a hardship to be faced, unfortunately. And in many cases here, it would actually denote a change in your professional career. When we pair it up with the Devil card, we have, ironically, we would think that in this case it's a very negative outcome. However, in this case, it actually shows a very strong fight that at the end shows some kind of reconciliation. There's also associations with if the querent is a woman, because let's not forget we're still talking about Marseille here. If the querent is a woman, in this case this one represents a pregnancy. When we pair it up with the Judgment card, so the Judgment card in this case, there's a bit of a referring to a legacy. There's a revelation or the discovery of something that is coming our way because of a death that has happened. When we pair it up with the World card, we do have a very positive outcome in this case. It also can refer back to a very long life and to some kind of a strong-mindedness and determination. And finally, pairing it up with the Fool card, on the other hand, it brings about that kind of breakage or that unbalance. So this is the card of balance by archetype, and this is the archetype of the unbalance, of the, you know, of losing the grasp on reality and just setting off towards the unknown. So obviously these two cards are almost opposites. So it needs to, these two need to be read when in the context with other cards, but just taken by themselves, this indicates, because the Fool is coming after the card of justice and balance, it means the breaking of that balance because we're being careless. So that was the Justice card. Now we're going to have a look at the pairings with the Hermit card, the Hermit card and the Pope card. So in this case, we again feel some resistance, and because the Hermit card is these two cards together always denote something very physical, something very down to earth. So it's not the as above, it's the so below we're going to have a look at. So some physical resistance. When we pair it up with the Wheel of Fortune, so in this case it's the ebb and flow of life, but because the Hermit card is seen as a lonely kind of card, is the person that sets off in some kind of a discovery of their own soul. That could, you know, paired up with the Wheel of Fortune, it actually points to depression, it points out to loneliness, and as a consequence of that, of depression and anxiety. There could also refer back to some kind of inconvenience due to the presence caused by an old person. Again, let's not forget that these interpretations are referring back to very concrete things and daily life things that we can find because of how concrete and how earthy the Marseille system is. When we pair up the Hermit with the Devil card, there's definitely a sentimental frustration. So the chains that are shown by the Devil card, in this case, because the Hermit card is definitely related to more to the mind rather than the physical experience of love, in this case there will be some kind of depression or some kind of frustration, but it's not a sensual frustration, not a sexual frustration, it's a sentimental frustration. But also because we still need to look at the physical aspect of the Devil card, we actually take into the consideration the possibility of the need for an operation. Now, when we pair it up with the Judgment card, ironically, I would have thought, you know, these two cards together to be representing something negative. Instead, this is actually the completion of the very task set out by the Hermit to accomplish, which is, you know, finding a way to know ourselves in such a way that we can overcome some difficulties. And when we have this combo, that points to exactly that. So surmounting some difficulties. When we pair it up with the World card, we have a great sense of being grounded, of actually being really 100% aware of what's going on around us. And in many cases, it can mean that if the Hermit has achieved what he wanted to achieve with the Judgment card, with the World card is the next step. So the Hermit, that person that had set away, that had, you know, parted ways with the others to know themselves, is actually returning because they achieved what they wanted. So this means a return of someone. When we pair it up with the Fool card instead, it actually, again, it looks into the possibility of returning back to the cave, having to look after ourselves, because this could actually refer back to some kind of illness, and it really encourages you know, the querent to seek the help of a physician. Okay, so now obviously we've got the Wheel of the Year. So the Wheel of the Year combined with the Hierophant card. In this case, we need to have the possibility, we need to create the possibility for us to stay back, to take a step back. So the encouragement is to stay at home. This is something temporary because the Wheel of the Year is never permanent. But for the time being, it's really an advice to stay home, don't do anything. When we pair it up with the Devil card, in this case, there's some ill that is coming our way, specifically when it comes to this financial situation. So we need to be very careful in our own investments in this moment, because they can go wrong somehow. It's something that really points out to being very careful. But at the same time, when we look back again, because it's the Devil card, we look back at the corporality of the card itself, there could be some sensual enjoyment. So it could be a sexual relationship that is very enjoyable. When we pair it up with the Judgment card, in this case, it's financial, it's denoting financial luck. It's something very positive that is coming our way. If we come from a period of lows, for example, we can expect something to get better because we're receiving help. And when we pair it up with the World card, it's even more so. It denotes a successful journey. There's something coming our way, something very positive coming our way. If earlier we saw it paired up with the Judgment card that was referring back to finances, this is still referring back to finances. So this could be a legacy, an inheritance that we receive. And when we pair it up with the Fool card, and when we finally pair it up with the Fool card, we actually realize that there could be something dangerous coming our way. It's these two cards together, however, I wouldn't read them in an extremely negative way. It's just a card with a lot of caution. You know, there's a lot of red flags. So if you're encountering this kind of combination, it's an invitation to look at the cards around it again, just to be sure you know, that you're on the right path and that you're not making any kind of mistake. So these were the first, I'd say, 10 cards on the Major Arcana. So for the other ones, I'm just gonna change tarot decks. So we're gonna have a look at another one in a second. So this deck is also published by Eron, and it's just the regular Tarot de Marseille. I'm just thinking if this, I don't know if this one is out of print or not. I don't know, sorry. I bought it used, I bought it secondhand on eBay because I just couldn't find it many years ago. Let's see if it says something here about the publication. No. Well, no, that's, no. Okay, well, doesn't matter. In any case, it's yeah, from many years ago. So this is your more traditional. As a matter of fact, I used to read and shuffle reversals. So this card, I have to put them back in order. So let's have a look. Okay, so I put everything back in order, and we can look at the pairs now. So we've got the Strength, which is traditionally in the Tarot of Marseille it's in position 11. So when we combine it with the Hierophant, we've got enthusiasm. Also, there is a note saying that if the querent is a young person, then we can look at marriage. Now, this is obviously, you know, because we're referring back to a tradition. Well, Marseille was from the 18th century, so obviously we're looking at something that it is not the way it was anymore, and obviously it doesn't matter. Age is not a bit of a it's not an issue in getting married anymore. And also marriage is not necessarily, it's more seen like a union of you know, not even a couple anymore. So we can actually see how things change, especially when it comes to society. So tarot has evolved in such a way in which we actually read the cards instead of a marriage, I would say a union. And not necessarily if the querent is young. So I would definitely see this enthusiasm and the union coming out of this pairing. Then if we read the combination of strength with the Wheel of Fortune, in this case we see the negative aspect of the struggle of the strength. So in this case we'll have a complicated kind of journey, and in many cases we will have, as a result of that loneliness. Now, when it comes to the physicality of the Devil card, paired up with the Strength card, we look at a very strong and powerful worries, preoccupation that comes our ways because of a physical, but also because of a moral kind of situation or issue. So we're looking at the material kind of in the material world, but at the same time that has consequences into our mind. So it's a worry of the body, but it's a worry of the mind as well. When we pair it up with the Judgment card, we see that there's actually a positive outcome to a searching. So we've been looking for something, we've been struggling, we've been looking elsewhere, and we definitely find a new possibility, a new and better job, for example, or work. When we pair it up with the World card, we also have something very positive. It's an improvement. So it's not the success or the overcoming of all of the obstacles like we've seen in many other cases. In this case, it's just indicating an improvement, but it's also a really good improvement. And as always, when it pairs up with the Fool card, we see the uncertainty brought about and the carelessness brought about the Fool card that actually influence the struggle of the Strength card. Therefore, in this case, we are asked to exercise a certain degree of caution because there could be some danger if we don't do our own research. So that was the Strength card, and now we're going to have a look at the Le Pendu. So the Hanged Man. So when we look at the pairing up of the Hanged Man with the Hierophant, we look at a possibility for improvement. Let's not forget the energies of these two cards. So the Hangman is the person that is actually taking a break to reflect on what's happening in their lives and just decide that for the time being they're just sacrificing the time that they have in their hands because they need to retrench, they need to understand what's going on. But also is in many cases it brings about acceptance of a status quo or something that is already there. With the Hierophant is definitely looking at an improvement of the situation. With the Wheel of Fortune, unfortunately, is quite the opposite. So we see that every single effort that has done, every sacrifice that has done, that has been taken in their lives has actually gone the opposite way as it should have. So this is a bad luck kind of combination. When we look at the pairing up with the Devil card, in this case, we see how useless this kind of sacrifice has been. So we stepped out of our comfort zone, we left everything behind, and instead of an improvement of our situation, we see that nothing is moving. So this waiting that we've been taking on our lives is actually useless, and we lose all our hopes. This is a terrible combination. This is one of the worst combinations in all of the Major Arcanas. When we see the Hangman and the Judgment, for example, we see again something unexpected, something that comes out of the blue, but in this case it's a positive thing because it's an unexpected solution to the problem that we're facing. So it could be a helping hand, for example. When we paired it up with the World card, we see that it's kindness and protection. So it generates out of the helping hand that we've seen in the Judgment card, and it's personified in this person that is actually being kind to us and protective to us. And as we've seen many times before, when we pair it up with a Fool card, we have to be careful that this kind of sacrifice we're doing right now is actually kind of useless again. It's not as strong as the Devil card, but it's telling us that right now, whatever decision we're going to take, it's not well thought of, and so it could be you know, it could bring about a certain unhappiness because we've done some sacrifice that did not bring the outcome we wanted. So that was the Hangman. Now we're going to have a look at the Death card as paired up with these Arcanas. So Death together with the Pope, with the Hierophant card, we see that in this case it actually signifies protection. As I said before, in Marseille, the card of the Hierophant is actually a very positive card. So protection with paired up with the Death card. We've got, unfortunately, this is also one of the really bad combos that we have in the Arcanas. In this case, it means almost a very bad ending, and almost a fatal one, I would say. When we pair it up with the Devil, it looks back into the illnesses of the body, but it's also the illnesses of not being able to replenish the energy that we spent, because let's not forget, we come out of the situation of the Hangman in which we were taking a sacrifice and we were depleting ourselves of that energy. When we enter into the Death card and we pair it up with the Devil card, we'll finally realize that not only that sacrifice has been useless, but we also spend so much energy that is now incredibly difficult to get it back. Finally, though, we see some light, because with the pairing up of the Judgment, we see something again unexpected that comes out of the blue, but it's generally speaking quite positive. And it's even, you know what, I wanted to say that sometimes this combo is seen as more positive than it should be. However, imagine having lost all our hopes and then finding out that perhaps you have a way out. Of course, it's not already a positive outcome. You've just been told that perhaps you have a way out. But the amount of strength and joy that that brings you is definitely more important than, you know, having always been on the right track and having never had anything against you and being told you're almost there. I believe that when you see the darkness, even one ray of light is much more joyful than always seeing the sun. And that's probably just me, but that's the way I see it. When we pair up Death with the World card, in this case, so this is a really positive kind of card, the World card. The World card paired up with the Death card is almost as if it were saying that whatever we've been through that was taken as some kind of finality for us, it was not to be. So there is a continuation where, yes, it is the end of a cycle because it's confirmed by the World card, but it's just the beginning of another as well. And when it's paired up with the Fool card, we have it's kind of an obvious kind of combo, because it denotes a failure, and we probably saw that coming because of the typical energy of the Fool card. So let's have a look now at the pairings for the Temperance card. So when we pair up the Temperance card with the Hierophant card, in this case, we've got a lot of emotional kind of a coming and going because of the element of water, of course, referring back to the sentiments and the feelings and the emotions. And the Temperance card is a card of motion in which there's this duality. At the same time, there is a communication taking place and going on, because it's not just going from one cup or jug or goblet, or however you want to call it, to another, but it comes back and forth. So when we have the pairing up with the energy of the Pop card, in this case we do have a lot of emotions come into play in a relationship. Then when we pair it up with the Wheel of Fortune, in this case we have the accomplishment of a plan. So the Wheel of Fortune in this case actually takes up the positive energy of the Temperance card, so it's something positive coming our way. When we pair it up with the Devil card, because the Devil card is such a strongly sensual kind of card, in this case it shows animosity, it shows there's a lot of restlessness, there's a lot of almost to the point of being hurting, and it can also mean that we were in an argument and we've lost, and that hurt our pride. But thankfully, you know, it's always the same kind of iterism, is the same kind of a journey. When we pair up the Temperance card with, it's almost as if we were given a green flag, so a green light. Everything that has been dangerous for us, that has felt dangerous for us has been avoided. And that was kind of unexpected, because of the unexpected news coming out of the Judgment card. When we pair Temperance with the World card, obviously it's a very positive combo, and it's almost as if everything that has been said before, all the misunderstandings that could have led to a situation of duality and conversation back and forth, and we've seen before a little bit of fights taking place, for example, all of that has been resolved, and there is an explanation, and it's a good explanation. But unfortunately, when we pair it up with the Fool card, as we can imagine, in this case there's a little bit of disillusionment. It's almost as if everything that we thought about ourselves and others has not materialized, and so we feel like we're being fooling ourselves about our own possibilities. So let's have a look at, in this case, the Devil card, which is obviously, we cannot pair up the Devil with the Devil, so it's got one pairing less, but we can still pair up the Devil card with the Pope. So when we pair up the Devil card and the Pope, the positive effect of the Pope card is very strong, even on the Devil. So in this case, we point at level-headedness and more wisdom. When we pair it up to with the Wheel of Fortune, we will have an alternating between being frustrated and being satisfied. So it's almost as if we have the Wheel of the Year card by itself, but its effects on our body and our mind are exacerbated because of the pairing up with the Devil card and the physicality of the Devil card. When we pair it up with the Judgment card, in this case, it's almost as if it were a bit of a advice on healing up our hurt feelings by accepting something that is very logical, very reasonable, so rational, let's say. When there is a pairing of the Devil card with the World card, in this case, it's pointing at it's a physical meeting between people, and it's someone that is very accomplished. It could be a wealthy person, or it could be someone with, let's say, it's something with a lot of influence in the world that can be positive. When we pair it up with the Fool card, in this case, it's quite the opposite. So instead of dealing with someone very honest, very open, very accomplished, also wealthy, in this case, we actually have to be very careful, because this could indicate very dishonest kind of business dealings. That was the Devil card. So now we are talking about La Maison Dieu. So in this case is the Tower. In this case, we pair it up with the Hierophant card. So again, you will notice there's a bit of a pattern here, because when we look at inherently negative cards, like for example, the let's say, well, the devil card is an inherently negative card. Sometimes the pairing up with very positive card can actually bring about a positive outcome. So when the Maison Dieu, so the tower, represents the complete chaos, when we pair it up with the wisdom represented by the Hierophant, actually brings better, what we say, better self-control. So instead of chaos, we have a positive outlook on something that we can control. But there's always, there's always the jolly card, which is the Wheel of Fortune. So in this case, paired up with the Tower, it's ironically, it's pointing at something that we feel is completely useless in our actions. We feel also the restlessness of doing something, but it's also between our new friendships, new relationships, new contacts at work. For example, we have this feeling that whomever we've been in touch with is not bringing anything, is not contributing to what we need, is not bringing anything new on the table. When we pair it up with the Devil card, as you can imagine, it's a very negative combination. But in this case, the Tower has got let's say a stronger power than the Devil card. So in this case, it's almost as if we were telling anything we achieve will not succeed, anything we feel will not be reciprocated. So don't hope for anything, don't attempt anything, because it's not going to work. When we pair it up with the Judgment card, on the other hand, because it's something unexpected, something coming out of the blue, there is a chance for something positive. So we need to look at the bright side of things. It's even stronger when we look at it as the pair up with the World card. So there's a lot of hope that is coming our way after the darkness of the destruction in the Tower and the storm that destroyed it. We actually see at the calm, we're actually looking at the calm after the storm, and the first ray of light that pierces through the clouds. And when we pair it up with the Fool card, in this case, as you can imagine, is very negative. It's a kind of the ingenuity, which is maybe an endearing quality of the Fool, is actually seen in its negative aspects of disillusionment, because it's bringing about that kind of complications that cannot be overcome. That was the Tower card. Let's have a look now at what we can read in combination with the Star card. So when the Star card is paired up with the Hierophant card, we have a sense of grounding that is actually becoming even more stable. It's almost that kind of consolidation that it's smidge aside from stagnation, but it's still very positive. So it's a firmness that we achieve thanks to the to the Hierophant card. When we look at the Star combined with the Wheel of Fortune, we have a little bit of it's almost as if it were telling us to slow down, because we are caught in the rhythm of the wheel, and so we're doing things in a way that is not let's say it doesn't have any kind of organization, it's not tidy, and therefore as a consequence we need to be careful that something can actually slip through the cracks. It's very possible. So the Star card paired up with the Devil card is the denial of something we've been hoping. So again, the Devil card trumps the positive card, the positive energy that is always associated with the Star card. So we have a lot of hope. The Star card is the card of hope, but this hope is kind of is frustrated by the presence of the Devil. Again, in the cycle, when we see that something unexpected comes out of the Judgment card, when we pair it up with the Star card, there's an opportunity that is coming our way. But because there's this sense of continuity, we need to be careful to take it at the right time. And if we do take it at the right time and we pair up the Star card with the World card, then success is certain. But we need to be careful, because when we pair it up with the Fool, there's that sense of carelessness that comes back, and therefore it can actually be indicative of a mistake or a fear, because let's not forget that the hope, the Star card is representing hope, and the opposite of hope is fear. So when you're not grounded and when you don't necessarily know what you know, the light will bring about, then we are actually kind of falling into the realm of fear. So this was the Star card. Let's have a look at the pairings, and we're almost there. For the Moon card, and the Hierophant is a very interesting combination, because the Moon in the tradition of the RWS is actually seen, sorry, not the RWS. In the RWS is almost like a neutral card. It brings about the introspection. It's the ebb and flow of life, but it's also the kind of invitation that we receive from the card to think about ourselves and take care about ourselves in this moment. But when we look at the traditional way to read it in the Marseille system, the Moon is actually the in contrast with the fulfillment brought about the light of the sun. So the Moon will never have as much power as the sunlight, and therefore it's the disappointment. It's the fact that what we wanted to achieve does not materialize and it's not manifested. So when we pair it up with an actually really good card, it's still something that starts from a negative point of view, but because the Hierophant is a good card, we see the diminishing, or it's almost as if the negativity of the card is kind of smothered or smoothened out by the Hierophant. So that the injuries, the illness that are coming our way, or we have to face in the Moon card, that are actually kind of healed. Again, in this case, we'll see that the Wheel of the Year is bringing a good outcome. So the bad luck we felt that we were going through with the Moon card is actually overcome with the combination of the Wheel of the Year card, with the Wheel of the Year, sorry, the Wheel of Fortune card. We have also this combination with the Devil. Now, okay, we need to remember that when it comes to the Devil, there's also in the Marseille system, there's always this referring back to the physicality and the embodiment of the card. So in this case, it's a very negative card. It points to impossibility to conceive, impossibility to enjoy the very few positive sensual aspects of the Devil card. There's this strong opposing force coming from the Moon, which is you know, also being exacerbated by the negativity of the Devil card. So we're looking at something that is completely blocking all of our physical possibilities. So when we wanted to get pregnant, we couldn't. When we wanted to have a physical relationship, we couldn't. So there's this kind of pointing out to the impossibility to fulfill desires in the physical realm. And as a consequence of that, we need to see it as, you know, when we go back to the So Below, it can also refer to an operation to the, you know, the reproductive system, the organs in the reproductive system. When we pair it up with the Judgment card, like in this case, so we're looking at a finally, after the negation that was brought by the Devil card, we're actually looking at again as something unexpected, that it's an unexpected healing, or there could be both physical and moral, and so we see that as some kind of a deliverance. When we look at this pairing, so the Moon and the World card, we are told that very soon the light will come back. So the let's say the hardship or the difficulties we're facing right now will be short-lived because of the light coming from the World card and the accomplishments. But as you can imagine, when we pair it up with the Fool again, in this case, it refers back to pain, some kind of a physical upset. That negation again comes back to the surface and tells us that things are not going the way we would like them to. That was the Moon card. When we look at the Sun card, paired up with the Hierophant. So in this case, we have an indication of good and long life. When we pair it up with the Wheel of Fortune, we look at the satisfaction after making a journey. So it's again that kind of very positive and strong feeling of the fulfilling light of the sun. Whenever it's paired up with the neutral card, it will be positive. Whenever it's paired up with a negative card, such as the Devil card, for example, in this case, there's just a little bit of a lessening of the power, of the positive power of the Sun card. So in this case, there's just a little bit let's say of a delay in the vitality of the Sun card, but it can also refer back to so the Sun card is such a strong and powerful positive card, and the light of the sun is the strongest thing in the all of the elements, such that its result, or its the way in which it's affecting the Devil card is taking all of the let's say the shame that comes out of the Devil card and transform it into something more positive. So we see all of the negative aspects of the Devil card that are actually enlightened by the Sun card. When we pair it up with the Judgment card, there's a lot of indication towards a productive kind of environment. Everything becomes useful and productive. Even when it comes to a relationship, for example, it's a productive one. If we pair it up with the World card, there's something new and positive that actually manifests itself, a new situation that is very stimulating for us. And as usual, when you pair it up with a negative card, in this case, there's a little bit of a lessening of the power of the Sun card. So when it's paired up with the Fool card, you have this kind of disappointment, even though, again, this is an encouragement to look at the cards around it, because it's a disappointment that it could be short-lived, it could be a failure, that it's just at the moment. And now we, so after the Sun, we have Judgment. So Judgment here with the Pop card. There you go. So in this case, these are two positive cards. There's something unexpected that is achieved thanks to wisdom, the application of wisdom. Then we have a look at the pairing up with the Wheel of the Year. In this case, it actually points out to a journey, and this journey is something that will settle everything in a positive way. Then we're looking at the pair up with the Devil card. So in this case, again, we're going to have to remind ourselves of the very strong physicality of the Devil card and the fact that Marseille looks at the soul below. So in this case, it points out at our progeny. So it could be our children, but it could be someone we're taking care of that is that's younger than us, for example. So if we're a teacher, it could be our pupils, you know, that kind of relationship. It could be a source of worry, and we need to understand that the only way to go through is to accept the current situation. When we pair it up with the World card, it points to love and friendship, and it's a very positive outcome. Ironically though, when we pair it up with the Fool card, it points up to the opposite. So something that was positive in our contacts, in our relationship with the World card, becomes negative. So those friends we were counting on with the World card become false friends with the Fool card. And this points also to disorganization. So after the Judgment card, we're going to have a look at the pairings for the World card, and we're almost at the end of it. So we've got the World card paired up with the Hierophant. It points out to a person that is full of wisdom, protective. It's a guide, it's a mentor that will appear in our lives. When we pair it up with the Wheel of Fortune, it points to a fortification of a ground, you know, a kind of a positive development of a previous action. So whatever we've done has actually been very fruitful. When we pair it up with the Devil card, it points out at a lot of selfishness. But this kind of selfishness that may feel like it's a positive thing is actually a negative thing, because it's almost as if we were going to the exasperation of this kind of selfishness. So if we don't have our own ego, because we renege our ego all the time, we can actually end up not understanding what we need anymore. So too much selfishness in our decision is actually a negative thing. And when we pair it up with the Judgment card, is again this kind of really positive outcome coming from the events. There's the unexpectedness of the Judgment card that is actually trumped a little bit by the grounding of the World card. So it's almost as if we knew that working hard we would have achieved the positive outcome. And when we pair it up with the Fool card, we have a little bit of, at the moment, we have a little bit of carelessness, and we're actually embracing that because we understand the World card is actually making you think that it's necessary to be careless. It's the ingenuity of the Fool that is actually rewarded in this case. And now what we've got, last but not least, is the pairing up of the Fool card, because the Fool card also can be paired up with the major cards on the Major Arcana. So what we've got between the Fool, let's say the Fool together with the Hierophant, in this case, finally, we'll see the positive influence of the second card on a card that is necessarily a card of being uncertain. So the wisdom of the Pope will bring back that kind of map that we needed. So we'll go back to the right road. When it's paired up with the Wheel of Fortune, it indicates a better outcome in health. When it's paired up with the Devil card, unfortunately, it points to an unhappy marriage or an unhappy love affair, something that will make us, will create a lot of anxiety. And when we pair up with the Judgment, as always, this is an unexpected help that is coming out of the blue towards us. We definitely did not have that in mind, but it's something very positive. And last but not least is the Fool card paired up with the World card, which is a very, very positive combination, and it brings about improvement from all sides. Now, this is, as I said at the beginning of this video, this is the way in which these combinations read for the Marseille system. However, as you can see, there is a very clear path on associations. So we go through a journey from the negativity and the certitude of the first card until it's almost as if we went over the fence with the Wheel of Fortune, and then after that we still have to face a lot of uncertainty, especially the physicality of the Devil card is very strong in all of the cards, the other cards, even when they're really positive cards like the World card, for example. But then it gets better, it seems to be getting better, because we see the unexpected help coming from the Judgment card and the resolving of the outcome in a positive way thanks to the World card. So again, thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. I just wanted to say that this kind of courses that I'm giving, these are not necessary for beginners. This system of reading association between the cards, it's not something you can do if you don't know the meanings of the cards, if you don't necessarily acquaint yourself first with the energies of the card themselves. Not necessarily because you cannot memorize it, but because you don't need to memorize it. Once you know the energy of the cards, it's something that is almost consequential. It's something that it's very easy to let's say memorize, but also to have your intuition, let's say, bring you to the outcome. It's just that when you already know the energies of each and every card, then combining them together, it's still possible to memorize them, but I wouldn't necessarily invite you to do that. I would necessarily invite you to draw your own conclusions. Obviously, we've seen a lot of neutral cards, we've seen a lot of positive cards, we've seen a lot of negative cards. When we put these together, just think about life, think about normal life, the way in which life actually evolves, the way in which if you take upon a journey and you find some obstacles in the journey, obviously a neutral card will tell you that you may eventually have to change route, but a positive card will tell you that you're on the right path, whereas a negative card will tell you the opposite. So these are kind of inferable meanings, you know, that I've shown you today in these combinations, but you cannot do any inferment if you don't have the basis. So that's what I wanted to just say as a kind of a disclaimer, that this is not something that you can do or study when you don't necessarily know the first things about the cards. You can enjoy this video at any time of your journey through the knowledge of how to use and read tarot, but this is definitely something you will encounter after a while. So I don't know, I'm kind of curious to hear about you guys, your way of reading tarot. Do you read this kind of correspondences and combination between the cards? As I said before, there's a few of them which are quite well known in the tarot community, others that are more obscure. And being this in Marseille, obviously we were always referring back to the physical world, the daily life, the nitty-gritty stuff, which is also very important because we're not always talking about major kind of energies. Again, thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. More to come. Have a great day.